Hi, this is Neil Clements. This is The Real Deal with Neil. Today we're talking about land subdivision, a huge topic in the real estate investing community. The first thing we're going to go over with land subdivision is the 3 different types of land subdivides you can do, all the way from very easy to super complex. We're also going to talk about why they're such a big deal, how investors are making a ton of money with them, and we're even including this in a 4-part series on how to do everything from start to finish on a different type of subdivide. So stay with me, let's get started. So we're going to start with, what's the big deal about land subdivisions? Well, the big deal about land subdivisions is that for a little bit of extra work than a normal land flip that you would do, you're actually able to add value to a property. And so similar to the way whenever you buy, say, like a single family rent house and you're able to renovate the house to make it more valuable, command more rent, or you buy a commercial, maybe an office building, and you're able to still renovate it, rezone it, you're able to reposition it to a new tenant, and you increase the operating income of the asset, you get a higher cap rate, therefore you sell it for more money. Both of those are just different value add strategies in different spheres of real estate. Well, in the land game, one of the biggest value adds you can do is actually land subdivision. And land subdivision is one of the only strategies that I'm familiar with to where whenever you go to a property owner, instead of offering that property owner half of what a property is worth, or maybe 60%, 50 to 60% of value, a lot of times you're able to offer 90 to 100% of market value because of your value add play. And so, and if you're asking, well, how does that work? How can you offer full market value and make any money? Well, the way that it works is, just take, for instance, a rural subdivide, which we'll get into the 3 different types here in a second. But say you go out and buy 50 acres and you want to make 5 10-acre lots in a state that considers that maybe an exempt subdivision. Well, to the seller who reviews comps, or maybe has a real estate agent or somebody looking out for their best interest, they're going to run comps based upon selling 50 acres. And in today's real estate market, 50 acres in most areas are going to sell for less price per acre than, say, a 10-acre tract. Well, why is that? It's because a lot more people can afford a 10-acre tract than can afford a 50-acre tract. And a lot more people are willing to increase that price per acre because there's a lot more demand at that price range than there would be at the higher price range. And so what we're actually able to do is, say, enter a property at $500,000 for 50 acres, and then through making the 10-acre tracts, 5 of them at, say, $200 a piece, we're acquiring at $10,000 an acre, selling at $20,000 an acre, exiting at $1 million, all because we knew what I'm going to be talking about today, which is the different types of land subdivisions and how to maximize value. So there's your answer to why are so many people talking about it? Why is it so important? It's because it's one of the only strategies that allow you to actually do a value add play on land without building a structure. So that's why it's so incredible, and that's why it's so important and so talked about now. Okay, so let's talk about the next part, which is the different types of subdivisions that you can do. And so there's 3 main types. The first type of plat that we're talking about today is an exempt plat. And so why is it called an exempt plat, and what is it? Well, an exempt plat takes advantage of an exemption at either a county, a state, a city. Some kind of level has decided that there is exemptions that you can take advantage of inside of their subdivision regulations or inside of their zoning code. So a great example of this, and the reason why subdivides are so prevalent in the Texas area, is because there is a Texas-wide state exemption that if all of your resulting lots after your subdivide end up at 10 acres or more, then you should be able to just subdivide without having to get any approval from the local boards. So that's going to be from your county boards, from your city boards, etc. That exemption should be in place in most of the state of Texas because it is a Texas state law. And so what does all of that mean? Why is that important? Well, an exempt subdivide allows you to bypass all approving authorities. And as you'll see in like the minor plat and the major plat, well, the approving authorities are really what takes such a long time. And then also the documentation that they want to see is what makes it cost so much, and also what makes it become so risky. And so just know that the advantage with an exempt plat is that instead of having to go out and actually get, say, a plat done to have to send to the county to get approvals and go through the whole formal process, all that you have to do is hire a surveyor. The local surveyor should be able to prepare you, multiple surveys for your lots or a plat drawing of your lots. and then you can go sell them. And for those of you watching who've never heard of this before, that should be mind-blowing, because what does that mean? Well, that means as long as you meet all the other standards that it's going to take to be able to have buildable and sellable lots, that there's nothing holding you back from your current, thought process or your current methods of acquiring properties. Most people tend to get surveys on land before they close on them anyways. And so all you're talking about is a surveyor maybe drawing 3 or 4 extra lines, to split the lots up versus your current process, and potentially talking about maybe 1.5 to 2xing what you're selling your properties for, as long as all the other criteria is met. And for me, when I discovered the strategy, that was mind-blowing to me. And this is one of the main strategies we use in our business all the time. And this is by far the easiest way to get into subdividing if you're wanting to try a project, is to go for an exempt project. That way you don't have to have anybody else's authority or approval to do what you wanted to. All right, number 2, let's talk about minor subdivides. Okay, so we have an exempt subdivision. We already talked about that. On a minor subdivide, if you're having, say, more than 5, maybe 7 lots, typically is where you move from maybe an exempt to a minor. Sometimes you'll have to look up local approvals. In addition, a minor plat allows you to do lower acreage sizes. And so let's say that, just take the same example, you have 50 acres, but let's say that this time, instead of doing 5 10-acre lots, you wanted to do 10 5-acre lots. Well, because one of your lots was below 10 acres, again in Texas, now you're going to have to go in front of approving authorities, specifically the county, to be able to get your platting approval. And so what does that involve? What do you have to do there? Well, now you potentially, you have to involve a surveyor. A lot of surveyors will do plats for you. Sometimes you have to involve a civil engineer if it gets more complicated. But the big difference between a minor plat and a major plat is, on a minor plat, you're not installing any new roads, especially interior to a subdivision, is where that becomes incredibly relevant. So you're doing, say, maybe less than 10 lots. Your lots are lower sized acreage than 10 acres in Texas. Other counties and states are gonna have different regulations, but that's just a Texas thing. And then also, in addition to that, you're going off the existing road frontage and you're doing smaller lots than 10 acres, and that's what that'll look like. And so what do? Then we have to go to the civil, or we have to go to the surveyor. We have to get a plat drawing, a preliminary plat, which, if you don't know what a plat is, even though I've said probably the plat word maybe 100 times already in this video, a plat is essentially a collection of surveys, or it's a drawing that approving authorities can review to make sure that what you're submitting, they can actually see what your plans look like, right? It's a collection of surveys. And then you'll still need surveys beyond that at the end of the day whenever you sell the properties, just so that you know. But the minor subdivides, you're also now gonna have to prove to the local authorities who are reviewing your plat, you might have to do some drainage plans to make sure that you're not flowing drainage based upon your subdivide plan onto somebody else's lot, which can cost a few $1,000s to do those drainage plans. The plats themselves that you have to do could cost several $1,000s. In addition to that, you will likely have to prove that all utility access is available. So that's gonna be water, sewer, and electricity. There are other, requirements for other areas, but that's the basics of what you're going to have to do. And then the whole process from start to finish in the areas that we work in, which is, DFW area of Texas mostly. Most of the time we can get a plat approval done from the time we start, from the day we order a plat. It's gonna typically take 4 to 6 months is the time we budget ourselves. And so that's because we have to get some water studies done. That's because we have to verify all utilities are present. That's because of the time it takes to get the plat. That's because of the review and comment time that the county has to get back to us to tell us yay or nay, change this, change that, which inevitably always ends up with 10 or 15 different things to change, no matter how small or minor the plat is. But the point of the minor subdivide is you're not installing new roads. And so what you're doing is you're still adding value by a surveyor drawing lines, but you're just going a step further in that you're getting the county approvals because it's now required to do so. So that's what a minor plat looks like. So now let's finish it off with a major plat. So a major plat is a third category. Major plats are typically whenever you say you live in a lot and block subdivision or a platted community where 0.15 or 0.25 acre lots, quarter-acre lots, very high-density housing, new roads are constructed, full utilities are put in, you know, underground sewer, etc. That's when you turn into a major plat. That's typically going to be, you know, say 15 lots or more, 10 lots or more. That's when you're getting more into a city, inside city limits, probably reviewing and approving that, versus your minor plats and then also your exempt plats. A lot of times they're going to be more rural or more country style developments, you know, say 1 to 5 acre lots, potentially 10 acre plus for exempt. But when we're talking about major, that's when you're definitely going to have a civil engineer team involved. That's when you're going to have big scale plans for, you know, everything from roads to utilities to lot layouts. We've even had plans, you know, for a mobile home park versus single family versus multifamily. That's when it becomes very, very expensive. In a lot of areas, that's going to be a 6-figure plus just for the plans. And the hurdle there and why that becomes a little bit risky is because if you don't know what you're doing and you spend 6 figures on plans, you know, what if a buyer that you had lined up, if you're double closing or wholesaling, what if they walk away and you lose that money? Or even worse, what if the buyer's still there, but your plans don't get approved over some minor aspect? So it's really interesting when we look at major plats. That is definitely where you're either coming on with a partner who knows what they're doing in the local area, you're hiring a civil, or you're going the step further and installing a lot of things. That's when horizontal development more than just vertical comes into it. And so everything that we're talking about today is essentially entitlements. How do we get the right to do what we want to do in the different areas? And so that's where it comes exempt, minor, major. And when you have major, now you have another player in the ball game, meaning somebody who's going to put in roads, utilities, things like that, your horizontal players, before somebody can go vertical and can build houses. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the breakdown of the different types of land subdivisions. This is only part 104. And so if you would, please click on the next video, part 2, where we're going to go through how do we review properties for more of our exempt and our minor subdivide opportunities. How do we go through the property review necessary to know if a property is good for a subdivide or if it's not good for a subdivide? So you won't want to miss it. Go ahead and click there and we'll see you soon.